Right, I'm all set up. So we'll see when the notification pops out. Just checking Discord as per usual. And yeah, I think a notification will have rolled out. That's a lovely picture, Shannon. I'm just seeing a little cat of yours on Discord. I'm trying to think if I even knew you had a cat. They're adorable. I'm just saying that I'm live because people are still just chatting on Discord. Everything seems to be working on my end. Yeah, Teffy's in. Hello there, Teffy. Nice to see you. Can you hear me okay and everything? It seems to be fine. Shannon's here too. Yeah, I was just commenting on your little kitty. I hope you don't mind me showing that. Looks adorable. And I was trying to think, like, did I know you had a cat? I feel like I must have seen that little chap before. Is it a girl or a boy, Shannon? Or gender undisclosed, yet to be decided. Looks super sweet though. Have you had them a long time? And hello to Olivia. Both of them. Oh, so it is a different cat. Okay, I didn't know if it was just because it's black and white with splodges, whether it was just from a different angle. Because like here with the little white stripe on the nose, but here it's turned to the sides. I wasn't sure if it was just because it was dark that you can't see. What's the story, Shannon? It makes me miss Harry, of course, but it also makes me miss my former little kitties from the past. Millie and Foggy, the brother and sister, who look quite similar. This is little Harry. I say little, he's absolutely massive, but hello to Mama Fox as well. It's very late for you, 12:30. I wasn't sure if you'd pop in. Maria's getting ready for bed. Far too late. It's 1:30 in the morning, and she's got work in the morning. Miss Toffolies? Is that the name of one of your cats? That's an incredible name. What's the name of the other one, Shannon? Miss Toffolies. It's beautiful. It's like, feels like mistletoe mixed with some kind of Greek god or something. God of the Christmas. Even though Christmas didn't exist back then. You were waiting to see me, Mama Fox. Yeah, kept you waiting an extra hour and a half. I was a little bit optimistic with the midnight thing, it seems. But the evening didn't just go quite as planned. And we've been doing some more moving this weekend. Still living out of cardboard boxes predominantly, but made some really, really good progress with the unpacking and everything. The lady Fox has done wonderful, and yesterday we were cleaning up the old place, so that was a really, really big job, and getting the last few things out of there. So it's been quite a busy weekend, and then there's been some Christmas shopping, busy malls, and then got a bit tired this evening, but looking forward to Christmas. Has anybody got any particular Christmas plans they want to share? Oh, Mistopheles. Is that from Cats? I feel so uncultured now. And Yang. Was there a yin at some point, Shannon? So I'm guessing the predominantly black one is yang. They look so cute. Oh, and hello to Emma as well. Thank you for dropping in. Very nice to see you. Oh, and thank you, Olivia. I'm glad the sound quality is okay. Yeah, and sorry, Mama Fox was mentioning Colin, another beautiful cat of ours from the past. It was just these two little cuties of Shannon's so remind me of Millie and Foggy with the colouring and everything. Ah, hiya, Brad and Georgie popping in. Thanks for joining. Very nice to see you. Very nice to see you. Yeah, I relate to that, Georgie. I'm very much the type that could leave things unpacked for 4 years. Absolutely. Oh, Yin was her twin brother. I was really hoping there wasn't some kind of sad story behind that. I was wondering if it was a dangerous thing to mention. So so Yang is a little bit older maybe than I'm sorry for I'm just like super curious. I love cats and animals and pets in general. Have you shared pictures of these little guys on Discord before, Shannon? I feel like I must have seen them, but maybe not. I'm so used to seeing Two Poops, Logan's doggo. He's so cute. Sterling Two Poops. But yeah, is anybody up for anything particularly unusual this year for Christmas, or have we any family plans, or what's happening? It's really crept up on me, to be honest. I can't believe it's Christmas Day in just a couple of days' time, and like I was saying, Swedish Christmas a day earlier, technically as well. It's so soon. It was such a lovely few days, was that, Georgie? Like, it was really really needed. Yeah, visiting home and with the lady accompanying. It was so nice. Oh, okay. I'm glad there was no sad story, Shannon. Misto, what a sweet name. Oh, oh, cheers, Olivia. I'm so bad at noticing that. I'm just because I'm staring at my live chat box in the streaming software. You see, in my Streamlabs, and I don't even think to look at that. Thank you so much. Logan reminded me about how did I refresh this now? Logan reminded me about the BRB sign last time, and now you've got me covered with the chat box. Should work now, I think. There we go. We've got green, light green today. That's okay. Holly and Christmas trees. So unfortunately, your live chat has just not been recorded so far for the first few minutes. But it will still be in the recorded stream in the little live chat section, just not on screen. And Carly gets the first message in on screen, followed by Georgie. Nice to see you, Carla. Thanks so much for joining. And are we enjoying the story so far with A Christmas Carol? I was saying at the end of last stream that it's a lovely read for me. Really nice from the narrator's point of view. So I hope you've been enjoying it, whether familiar or otherwise. I know Dickens is rather flowery, I suppose. like, I wouldn't say he was over descriptive or anything like that, but I can totally understand why some people might find certain sections a little bit difficult to follow. Because strange, like I was mentioning Bram Stoker with the bit of Dracula chat at the end of the stream last time as well, and there is a huge difference in their writing style. To say they were writing at similar times, I think Stoker's writing, at least compare, if we just compare Dracula to A Christmas Carol, I think Stoker feels more modern. It's sometimes hard for me to believe that it was written 130 years ago. Thanks, Shannon. Thank you, Olivia. I know, Brad. I know. Tell me about it. But Holly Green is good now. We've got it up on the screen. Festive green, as Georgia says. Georgie. So nice to have the Carters back. Like I said, some of the original Fox fam with those original Foxy book clubs early last year. Yeah, practically Cliff Notes, Brad. Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah. Tolkien is extremely descriptive, of course. But it's not like just the description, it's the use of English, if you know what I mean. Like, I would say Tolkien is more modern, but feels considerably more modern. But then, like, Stoker as, like, a rough contemporary, just feels... Like, Stoker reminds me... Obviously, it's the other way around, technically. But Stoker reminds me of Michael Crichton. It'd be interesting to know if Michael Crichton was influenced by Stoker or where his influences came from. I feel like I've read of a couple of people influenced by Crichton. And what book? Someone was mentioning another story by Crichton that they thought was fantastic and had started reading it after listening to some of my Jurassic Park reading way back. Cannot remember what story it was, but it was like another massively famous story that I had no idea was written by him. Yeah, like, I don't know if anybody agrees, those of you that are familiar with Jurassic Park or Crichton's writing, and then in comparison to Dracula and Stoker, but I don't know. It's like descriptive, but very to the point, very punchy, intelligent, kind of academic, feels very, very well researched, various timelines and perspectives going on simultaneously, flashbacks and all these different chronologies and everything, but it just ties together very, very well, and it seems to have a real meaning and a point and keeps the story moving together whilst delivering new information and making the reader work and these kind of things. Yeah, I know what you're saying, Georgie. Yeah. I really like it. Yeah, Tolkien can drag, I know what you mean, but I just get so... I don't know, I just get so involved. Again, I think it's definitely different reading it out aloud, like kind of narrating Tolkien to reading it as well. I don't know, I so appreciate his writing style when I'm narrating, and more so than C.S. Lewis, I must admit, with you mentioning Lewis there. Obviously a wonderful writer, and The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is a wonderful book. But sometimes I feel like he's kind of over elaborating maybe on something that I feel like, do we really need to know about the exact shape of the crockery or something? You know what I mean? And it's like, it's very, I don't know. It's very of its time and of its class, I suppose. But still a lovely, lovely read, no doubt. A.C. Doyle, I don't think I've read anything. You could maybe name a couple of books, but I don't think I'm familiar. I would hope I would know something, but it doesn't just jump to mind. But thanks, Brad. That's kind of you to say. I hope it feels smoother, but um, I mean, I think Lord of the Rings is going to be great to some extent, however it's delivered. Oh, you were back on The Hobbit again, Georgie. Are you up to date with Lord of the Rings, by the way? I know, of course, it was a very, very long time ago since I got chapter 12 out, and it's even surprisingly a few months since I did those live readings of the first chapter of book 2. But are you all caught up with that? Oh, A.C. Doyle. Sorry, Arthur Conan Doyle. I'm so used to sticking it all together. Sorry, yeah. Yeah. I was like, Doyle sounds familiar, but like when it was, the initials completely threw me there. Ah, right, okay. Yeah. I feel like, to me it feels quite different. Um but I've not read any of those longer stories of his, like A Study in Scarlet and such. Because I find Stoker much easier to read than A.C. Doyle, actually. But yeah, I know what you're saying. Punchy, like very sharp and punchy, definitely. Oh, interesting, Olivia. I know what you mean by that, though. I do. I do. It takes a bit of time to kind of warm up with Tolkien, you're saying there. I totally appreciate that. And it can, even with me narrating it. Yeah, I've said this many times, but Lord of the Rings and Tolkien in general, but Lord of the Rings much more than The Hobbit, is the hardest thing for me to narrate that I've ever tried, even though I really, really love it, and enjoy the Lord of the Rings more than some other stories. But it's very challenging for a number of reasons. And like I've said, Dracula really surprised me with how difficult that is. As I foolishly thought that was going to be a little bit simpler. I don't know what I was thinking, but yeah, Lord of the Rings is very, very challenging. So yeah, I understand why it would take a bit of time to warm up, even as the listener. Yeah, Hound of the Baskervilles, exactly. That was the other one I was thinking of course. I just couldn't grab the name. But I imagine the style is a little bit different with those kind of full length stories as opposed to the little short stories. Definitely should give those a go at some point, especially with them being public domain. You know, I did those 2 live readings last year with these first book clubs, and I've not got back to Sherlock Holmes since. But you know, it's really, really nice to try different things as well. To load what on the drive, Georgie? Sherlock Holmes. Because the original readings, because I've done that kind of remaster of the Speckled Band with the video and everything, and I did some further editing, quite a lot of further editing and such. But those 2 original ones, they should definitely be on the $5 Google Drive. I can picture it, I'm sure, if that's what you're talking about. Yeah, they should definitely be there. And yeah, I think I was saying this on the last stream as well. Yeah, Dracula and Lord of the Rings. That's like my main focus in the new year. So yeah, it'll be chapter 11 of Dracula, and I'm gonna do a proper recorded version of that first chapter of book 2 as well. So yeah, Lord of the Rings, Dracula, main focus. And then, like I said before, I'd love to try the second book of Narnia as well, Prince Caspian. The Lotra, the Twitch Lotra, is that there? I'm not sure. If it is, it will be under the Red Fox Book Club section. I'll have to check. Maybe it's not. Because I was struggling with my hard drive space at one point, and then I've bought an external hard drive, but I think some of the stuff hasn't been uploaded from my hard drive, perhaps. I'll have to check that. There could be a couple of other things missing as well. There could be a couple of other streams missing, to be honest. Yeah, I think there's some Tamaria Prince missing, maybe a couple of chapters, actually. Need to call Teresa for that. She'll know. But thanks, George. Yeah, it was. I definitely gave it my best shot, but I definitely want to give that Lord of the Rings chapter the full works. That was just a little preview, a little warm up, and I was a bit inconsistent with the Gandalf voicing and things. It's really tough to read live as well. I mean, it's hard enough normally, and I hadn't read it for a while either. Right, yeah, you've just checked the Lotra folder. Yeah, could be in the Red Fox Book Club folder. You know, it would be the full streams if that's the case. But, yeah, I'll try and remember to have a look, Georgie. I've not seen any new faces dropping into the chat for a little while, so I feel like it's safe to get started with some reading, especially when it's late here. And I've not got too busy a day tomorrow, but I've got a few things to do. So I shouldn't, I'm already going to be up until 3 or something or more, 3 or 4. So I should get started. Oh, thanks, Georgie. Thanks. Is that because of the Gollum stuff, Brad? When you're on about Andy Serkis? I honestly must say, like, from things that people have commented on, I think, like with a lot of the voices that I do, I really try not to copy. Oh, Logan's here talking about new faces dropping in. Lovely to see you, Logan. I was on about Two Poops briefly. Hope he's doing well with his little squidgy face. But yeah, I try not to kind of copy or impersonate too many voices. Some stuff, like, I want to base it on things like I've mentioned before, like with Hagrid or Snape a little bit, and it just feels right, or I just cannot picture some other way of doing it. And Gollum is one of those, but it's not just because I didn't want to try a different voice. It's also because I just really, really enjoy impersonating that character. And I think it is one of the ones that I can do the best in terms of, like, very similar to the original. Doesn't make sense, but you know what I mean, like the most famous version, because I mean there must be other Gollum versions, on radio shows, and there was wasn't there an old bunch of Lord of the Rings films, or an old Lord of the Rings film? But yeah, like the most popular is obviously the Andy Serkis one. But yeah, I love that. I seriously love it. I do it too much. There's like in my personal life, in my private life. Yeah. Yeah, there's a fun video that I was meaning to share quite a long time ago, like when I was saying I was going up to the Arctic Circle. We took a bunch of videos, and I still want to share some of that stuff at some point. We'll see. But there was quite a funny one of me pretending to be Smeagol, which was kind of amusing. Will do. Yeah, it is, Georgie. Yeah, it just feels like it has to be that way. Yeah. Yeah, I love it. I have played around with that a bit on the streams, haven't I? I get a bit shy sometimes, but there must have been some Gollum in there. Like, I was messing around with some Snape and Hagrid, I remember, a little while ago, and even Wally. But yeah, I'm sure Gollum's been in there as well. That would have been creepy, Georgie. And like I said, I have been playing around with that in person. uh, hello. Is that Deacon? It looks like Deacon. Deacon Calendar. Hello to Ethan Newton. Oh, another new face as well. But hi there, Ethan. Hope you're doing good. Here's your happy birthday shout out. And hello to Dawn as well. Nice to see you. No, I've not tried Anne McCaffrey. Caffery. No, I've not. Familiar name, I think, but no, I've not done. There's so many things I should check out for sure. Yeah, nice to have recommendations as well, always. Oh, and Ashling's dropped in as well. Okay, I'm glad I didn't get started with the reading when there's a bunch more of you joining. That's really nice. How are you doing, Ashling? And please tell me how to pronounce your name, Dickon, because I am absolutely hopeless. Someone last time was saying that I'd nailed their name, and I was like, to be honest, I thought I'd butchered it, but I get lucky sometimes. Yeah, I'm surprised Shannon's not mentioned that actually. It's not the freshest, I must admit, but I've had it up all day, been out in the rain, or like the drizzle, this like permanent drizzle that we're living in at the moment in Stockholm, and it just looked. I just had enough of it, so I thought, okay, it's coming out, and maybe Shannon will appreciate it. Georgie. What can I say? We're clearly related. I shouldn't even joke about these things. I'm glad you're doing well, Aisling. Okay, I can get started. I can get started in a minute. Yeah, Shannon has nothing to do with it. I mean, she only paid me a few $100, but apart from that, she wasn't involved at all. Just a small bribe. Okay, are we all caught up with A Christmas Carol? By the way, I've got Stave 3 staring at me here. Because I know, like Aisling, you were saying last time you'd not listened to the first one, but you were enjoying just being here for the second reading. I'm just curious whether people are just dropping in and happy to hear some chat and some live reading and are not too bothered. Dobby is a special cup. This isn't mine, actually. But it's very, very nice. Everybody loves Dobby. I'm sorry, Shannon. Beetlejuice Burrito. That's a cool name. Are you a fan of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by any chance? As one of the main characters is from Beetlejuice. The alien imposter Ford Prefect. Such an awesome book. One that I have started a couple of times, actually. Narrating, I mean. There's still a recording of a live reading on my Twitch, for anybody interested. And one of my very original recordings over on my Patreon Google Drives as well. A few chapters there as well. Awesome book. And Mango's here as well. Doing great, Mango. Only half an hour late, but I was an hour and a half late. So, we're all just trying our best, aren't we? Nice to see you. Oh, you've caught up, Aisling. Good job. Oh, cool, Beetlejuice. Ah, yeah. I'm not surprised, Georgie, as dedicated Fox fans. I'm not surprised you'd listened to them a bunch of times before. Um, and I've got another guilty announcement to make here. Actually, that I haven't pre-read this chapter. I need to stop making this excuse. It just makes me sound very lazy. Um, had planned to, but haven't. And I have read this a very long time ago, but I've never narrated this one because, like you're just saying, Georgie, and I've mentioned a bunch of times, I have narrated Stave 1 and Stave 2 before. Haven't ever narrated Stave 3. Have read the book a long time ago. Have skimmed this a long time ago. Um, don't read the words. I'm just skimming. Hmm. Just been thinking about the voicing at one point here. You know, it's a live reading. I try not to worry about the character voices too much. It's different. Like for me mentally, it's different to when I'm doing a recorded version. It matters more there than here. But just having a think. Oh, that's a shame, Beetlejuice. Are you heading back to the mothership? You're saying you're having to go. Are you talking about that you need to leave planet Earth altogether, or is it just the stream? Have you other things to do? I must reread Hitchhiker's Guide. It's been such a long time since I've actually just sat down and read it. Like just with your so long and thanks for all the fish reference there. Very true, actually. The teasing is how we show our love, and I get made fun of all the time over on Discord, and I just have to take it on the chin. So try your best, Shannon. You're very much loved and appreciated. Exactly, Mango. Just reading a story, no pressure. Oh, thank you very much, Ashling. Yeah, I didn't pre-read at all last time. I did with some of Stave 1. Really meant to with Stave 2, but then because I actually accidentally started the stream, like I said, I didn't give myself a chance, but it worked out really well, so thanks ever so much. But I had narrated that one before, like I said, so I could remember quite a bit of it. But this one, I'm going in a little bit blind, so I'll just try my best. Oh, no worries, Logan. No worries. Speak no evil. Nice. That sounds like a very impressive setup, Logan. I respect that. Oh, you're doing the same, Shannon. Gosh. All right. I'm going to get started. If anybody else pops in whilst I'm reading, please give them a warm welcome. Even if someone just says hello, please give them a warm Fox fam welcome. Yeah, pretty much, Georgie. Must be. Unless he's got a 60-inch widescreen. And Shannon as well. I love that this little cat face, like your little display picture, Shannon. I love that it's still sideways. It's always been sideways, that little cat, and it still is sideways. It's very cute. Hey up! It's Jamie. Northern lads here. I tell thee what, Jamie, I've not seen thee for some time. How's it going? How are you doing? It's been a very long time, Jamie. I've got to give you a warm Yorkshire welcome from a fellow northerner. Oh, 52 inches, Shannon. Most impressive. Very nice. A little larger than life, I think. Wow. Multi-purpose, Shannon. Very executive. Well, as long as it works for you, Ashley. And I hope you're recovering okay. Football, Mango. Waste of time. No offense to those football fans out there. I like football too, but there's more important things. Okay, I think I'm going to get started. I hope you're doing well, everybody. Nice to see some very familiar faces, some faces I've not seen for a while, and some new faces too. It's a lovely mix. So I'll just have one more sip of tea, and then I'll get going. Oh, no worries, Jamie. You just lay low. You can just silently enjoy things from a distance. I'm glad you're doing well. Yeah, doing good. It's been a bit of a bumpy couple of months, like I mentioned here and there, but just settling into another new place, which is really, really lovely. And yeah, I think things are smoothing out a little bit. And yeah, like I've been saying on the last couple of streams as well, feeling very positive for next year and everything. So yeah, thanks. And I hope you're doing good as well. Don't be a stranger. Thanks for saying hi as well. It's always nice. Oh, and Teresa's dropped in as well. Good stuff. Gonna be honest with you, Teresa. It's probably not gonna be a To Marry a Prince night again tonight. I think that's gonna have to come once Christmas has passed, and I've just got a little bit. I can start a little bit earlier in the day, and but it will definitely come, and I hope you're enjoying A Christmas Carol. And lovely of you to join me this evening. And you've not missed any reading, as you were asking. No stress. Hope you're not too disappointed though with the prince. Oh, absolutely, Jamie. Absolutely. All right. Get settled. Of course you were going to ask, Teresa. Get settled. Lovely to see you all here. All right, let's get started. And like I said, if anybody drops in, do give them a foxy welcome. I'm not disturbing you too much. Are you okay? Okay. Okay. So, continuing with A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. And we are moving on to Stave 3 as part of our 5 Christmas streams. Hope you enjoy it. Stave 3. The second of the 3 spirits. Awaking in the middle of a prodigiously tough snore, and sitting up in bed to get his thoughts together, Scrooge had no occasion to be told that the bell was again upon the stroke of 1. He felt that he was restored to consciousness in the right nick of time for the especial purpose of holding a conference with the second messenger dispatched to him through Jacob Marley's intervention. But, finding that he turned uncomfortably cold when he began to wonder which of his curtains this new spectre would draw back, he put them every one aside with his own hands, and lying down again, established a sharp lookout all round the bed. For he wished to challenge the spirit on the moment of its appearance, and did not wish to be taken by surprise and made nervous. Gentlemen of the free and easy sort, who plume themselves on being acquainted with a move or two, and being usually equal to the time of day, express the wide range of their capacity for adventure by observing that they are good for anything from pitch and toss to manslaughter, between which opposite extremes, no doubt, there lies a tolerably wide and comprehensive range of subjects. Without venturing for Scrooge quite as hardly as this, I don't mind calling on you to believe that he was ready for a good broad field of strange appearances, and that nothing between a baby and rhinoceros would have astonished him very much. Now, being prepared for almost anything, he was not by any means prepared for nothing, and consequently, when the bell struck one, and no shape appeared, he was taken with a violent fit of trembling. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, a quarter of an hour went by, yet nothing came. All this time he lay upon his bed, the very core and centre of a blaze of ruddy light, which streamed upon it when the clock proclaimed the hour, and which, being only light, was more alarming than a dozen ghosts, as he was powerless to make out what it meant or would be at, and was sometimes apprehensive that he might be, at that very moment, an interesting case of spontaneous combustion, without having the consolation of knowing it. At last, however, he began to think, as you or I would have thought at first, for it is always the person not in the predicament who knows what ought to have been done in it, and would unquestionably have done it too. At last, I say, he began to think that the source and secret of this ghostly light might be in the adjoining room, for whence, on further tracing it, it seemed to shine. This idea taking full possession of his mind, he got up softly, and shuffled in his slippers to the door. The moment Scrooge's hand was on the lock, a strange voice called him by his name and bade him enter. He obeyed. It was his own room, there was no doubt about that, but it had undergone a surprising transformation. The walls and ceiling were so hung with living green that it looked a perfect grove, from every part of which bright gleaming berries glistened. The crisp leaves of holly, mistletoe, and ivy reflected back the light, as if so many little mirrors had been scattered there, and such a mighty blaze went roaring up the chimney as that dull petrification of a hearth had never known in Scrooge's time, or Marley's, or for many and many a winter season gone. Heaped up on the floor to form a kind of throne were turkeys, geese, game, poultry, brawn, great joints of meat, sucking pigs, long wreaths of sausages, mince pies, plum puddings, barrels of oysters, red-hot chestnuts, cherry-cheeked apples, juicy oranges, luscious pears, immense twelfth cakes, and seething balls of punch that made the chamber dim with their delicious steam. In easy state upon this couch, there sat a jolly giant, glorious to see, who bore a glowing torch, in shape not unlike Plenty's horn, and held it up, high up, to shed its light on Scrooge as he came peeping round the door. "Come in," exclaimed the ghost. "Come in and know me better, man." Scrooge entered timidly, and hung his head before this spirit. He was not the dogged Scrooge he had been, and though the spirit's eyes were clear and kind, he did not like to meet them. "I am the ghost of Christmas present," said the spirit. "Look upon me." Scrooge reverently did so. It was clothed in one simple green robe or mantle, bordered with white fur. This garment hung so loosely on the figure that its capacious breast was bare, as if disdaining to be warded or concealed by any artifice. Its feet, observable beneath the ample folds of the garment, were also bare, and on its head it wore no other covering than a holly wreath, set here and there with shining icicles. Its dark brown curls were long and free as its genial face, its sparkling eye, its open hand, its cheery voice, its unconstrained demeanour, and its joyful air. Girded round its middle was an antique scabbard, but no sword was in it, and the ancient sheath was eaten up with rust. "You have never seen the like of me before," exclaimed the spirit. "Never," Scrooge made answer to it. "Have never walked forth with the younger members of my family, meaning, for I am very young, my elder brothers born in these later years," pursued the phantom. "I don't think I have," said Scrooge. "I'm afraid I have not. Have you had many brothers, spirit?" "More than 1,800, said the ghost. "A tremendous family to provide for," muttered Scrooge. The ghost of Christmas present rose. "Spirit," said Scrooge submissively, "conduct me where you will. I went forth last night on compulsion, and I learnt a lesson which is working now. Tonight, if you have aught to teach me, let me profit by it." "Touch my robe." Scrooge did as he was told, and held it fast. Holly, mistletoe, red berries, ivy, turkeys, geese, game, poultry, brawn meat, pig sausages, oysters, pies, puddings, fruit, and punch all vanished instantly. So did the room, the fire, the ruddy glow, the hour of night, and they stood in the city streets on Christmas morning, where, for the weather was severe, the people made a rough but brisk and not unpleasant kind of music, in scraping the snow from the pavement in front of their dwellings and from the tops of their houses, whence it was mad delight to the boys to see it come plumping down into the road below, and splitting into artificial little snowstorms. The house fronts looked black enough, and the windows blacker, contrasting with the smooth white sheet of snow upon the roofs, and with the dirtier snow upon the ground, which last deposit had been ploughed up in deep furrows by the heavy wheels of carts and waggons, furrows that crossed and recrossed each other hundreds of times, where the great streets branched off, and made intricate channels, hard to trace in the thick yellow mud and icy water. The sky was gloomy, and the shortest streets were choked up with a dingy mist, half thawed, half frozen, whose heavier particles descended in a shower of sooty atoms, as if all the chimneys in Great Britain had, by one consent, caught fire, and were blazing away to their dear heart's content. There was nothing very cheerful in the climate or the town, and yet was there an air of cheerfulness abroad that the clearest summer air and brightest summer sun might have endeavoured to diffuse in vain. For the people who were shovelling away on the housetops were jovial and full of glee, calling out to one another from the parapets, and now and then exchanging a facetious snowball, better-natured missile far than many a wordy jest, laughing heartily if it went right, and not less heartily if it went wrong. The poulterers' shops were still half open, and the fruiterers were radiant in their glory. There were great, round, pot-bellied baskets of chestnuts, shaped like the waistcoats of jolly old gentlemen lolling at the doors and tumbling out into the street in their apoplectic opulence. There were ruddy, brown-faced, broad-girthed Spanish onions, shining in the fatness of their growth like Spanish friars, and winking from their shelves in wanton slyness at the girls as they went by, and glanced demurely at the hung-up mistletoe. There were pears and apples, clustered high in blooming pyramids. There were bunches of grapes, made in the shopkeeper's benevolence to dangle from conspicuous hooks, that people's mouths might water gratis as they passed. There were piles of filberts, mossy and brown, recalling in their fragrance ancient walks among the woods, and pleasant shufflings ankle-deep through withered leaves. There were Norfolk biffins, squat and swarthy, setting off the yellow of the oranges and lemons, and, in the great compactness of their juicy persons, urgently entreating and beseeching to be carried home in paper bags and eaten after dinner. The very gold and silver fish, set forth among these choice fruits in a bowl, though members of a dull and stagnant-blooded race, appeared to know that there was something going on, and to a fish went gasping round and round their little world in slow and passionless excitement. The grocers! Ugh! The grocers! Nearly closed, with perhaps 2 shutters down, or 1, but through those gaps such glimpses! It was not alone that the scales descending on the counter made a merry sound, or that the twine and roller parted company so briskly, or that the canisters were rattled up and down like juggling tricks, or even that the blended scents of tea and coffee were so grateful to the nose, or even that the raisins were so plentiful and rare, the almonds so extremely white, the sticks of cinnamon so long and straight, the other spices so delicious, the candied fruits so caked and spotted with molten sugar as to make the coldest lookers-on feel faint and subsequently bilious. Nor was it that the figs were moist and pulpy, or the French plums blushed in modest tartness from their highly decorated boxes, or that everything was good to eat and in its Christmas dress. But the customers were all so hurried and so eager in the hopeful promise of the day that they tumbled up against each other at the door, crashing their wicker baskets wildly, and left their purchases upon the counter, came running back to fetch them, committed hundreds of the like mistakes in the best humour possible, while the grocer and his people were so frank and fresh that the polished hearts with which they fastened their aprons behind might have been their own, worn outside for general inspection, and for Christmas doors to peck at if they chose. But soon the steeples called good people all to church and chapel, and away they came, flocking through the streets in their best clothes and with their gayest faces. And at the same time there emerged from scores of by-streets, lanes, and nameless turnings innumerable people, carrying their dinners to the bakers' shops. The sight of these poor revellers appeared to interest the spirit very much, for he stood with Scrooge beside him in a baker's doorway, and taking off the covers as their bearers passed, sprinkled incense on their dinners from his torch. And it was a very uncommon kind of torch, for once or twice, when there were angry words between some dinner-carriers who had jostled each other, he shed a few drops of water on them from it, and their good humour was restored directly. For they said it was a shame to quarrel upon Christmas Day, and so it was. God love it, so it was. In time, the bells ceased, and the bakers were shut up. And yet there was a genial shadowing forth of all these dinners and the progress of their cooking, in the thawed blotch of wet above each baker's oven, where the pavement smoked as if its stones were cooking too. "Is there a peculiar flavour in what you sprinkle from your torch?" asked Scrooge. "There is, my own." "Would it apply to any kind of dinner on this day?" asked Scrooge. "To any kindly given, to a poor one most." "Why to a poor one most?" asked Scrooge. "Because it needs it most." "Spirit," said Scrooge after a moment's thought, "I wonder you, of all the beings in the many worlds about us, should desire to cramp these people's opportunities of innocent enjoyment." "I?" cried the spirit. "You would deprive them of their means of dining every 7th day, often the only day on which they can said to dine at all," said Scrooge. "Wouldn't you?" "I?" cried the spirit. "You seek to close these places on the 7th day," said Scrooge, "and it comes to the same thing." "I seek!" exclaimed the spirit. "Forgive me if I am wrong. It has been done in your name, or at least in that of your family," said Scrooge. "There are some upon this earth of yours," returned the spirit, "who lay claim to know us, and who do these deeds of passion, pride, ill will, hatred, envy, bigotry, and selfishness in our name, who are as strange to us and all our kith and kin as if they had never lived. Remember that, and charge their doings on themselves, not us." Scrooge promised that he would, and they went on, invisible as they had been before, into the suburbs of the town. It was a remarkable quality of the ghost, which Scrooge had observed at the baker's, that notwithstanding his gigantic size, he could accommodate himself to any place with ease, and that he stood beneath a low roof quite as gracefully and like a supernatural creature as if it was possible he could have done in any lofty hall. And perhaps it was the pleasure the good spirit had in showing off this power of his, or else it was his own kind, generous, hearty nature, and his sympathy with all poor men, that led him straight to Scrooge's clerk. For there he went, and took Scrooge with him, holding to his robe, and on the threshold of the door the spirit smiled, and stopped to bless Bob Cratchit's dwelling with the sprinkling of his torch. Think of that! Bob had but 15 bob a week himself. He pocketed on Saturdays but 15 copies of his Christian name, and yet the ghost of Christmas present blessed his 4-roomed house. Then up rose Mrs. Cratchit, Cratchit's wife, dressed out but poorly in a twice-turned gown, but brave in ribbons, which are cheap and make a goodly show for 6pence. And she laid the cloth, assisted by Belinda Cratchit, second of her daughters, also brave in ribbons, while Master Peter Cratchit plunged a fork into the saucepan of potatoes, and getting the corners of his monstrous shirt-collar, Bob's private property, conferred upon his son and heir in honour of the day, into his mouth, rejoiced to find himself so gallantly attired, and yearned to show his linen in the fashionable parks. And now 2 smaller Cratchits, boy and girl, came tearing in, screaming that outside the baker's they had smelt the goose and known it for their own. And basking in luxurious thoughts of sage and onion, these young Cratchits danced about the table, and exalted Master Peter Cratchit to the skies, while he, not proud, although his collars nearly choked him, blew the fire, until the slow potatoes, bubbling up, knocked loudly at the saucepan lid to be let out and peeled. "What has ever got your precious father, then?" said Mrs. Cratchit. "And your brother, Tiny Tim? And Martha warn't as late last Christmas by half an hour." "Here's Martha, mother," said a girl, appearing as she spoke. "Here's Martha, mother," cried the 2 young Cratchits. "Hurrah! There's such a goose, Martha." "Why, bless your heart alive, my dear, how late you are," said Mrs. Cratchit, kissing her a dozen times and taking off her shawl and bonnet for her with a vicious zeal. "We'd a deal of work to finish up last night," replied the girl, "and had to clear away this morning, mother." "Well, never mind so long as you are come," said Mrs. Cratchit. "Sit you down before the fire, my dear, and have a warm, Lord bless you." "No, no, there's father coming," cried the 2 young Cratchits, who were everywhere at once. "Hide, Martha, hide." So Martha hid herself, and in came little Bob, the father, with at least 3 feet of comforter exclusive of the fringe, hanging down before him, and his threadbare clothes darned up and brushed to look seasonable, and Tiny Tim upon his shoulder. Alas for Tiny Tim! He bore a little crutch, and had his limbs supported by an iron frame. "Why, where's our Martha?" cried Bob Cratchit, looking round. "Not coming," said Mrs. Cratchit. "Not coming?" said Bob, with a sudden declension in his high spirits, for he had been Tim's blood horse all the way from church, and had come home rampant. "Not coming upon Christmas Day?" Martha didn't like to see him disappointed, if it were only in joke, so she came out prematurely from behind the closet door and ran into his arms, while the 2 young Cratchits hustled Tiny Tim and bore him off into the wash-house, that he might hear the pudding singing in the copper. "And how did little Tim behave?" asked Mrs. Cratchit, when she had rallied Bob on his credulity. And Bob had hugged his daughter to his heart's content. "As good as gold," said Bob, "and better. Somehow he gets thoughtful sitting by himself so much, and thinks the strangest things you ever heard. He told me coming home that he hoped the people saw him in the church because he was a cripple, and it might be pleasant to them to remember upon Christmas Day who made lame beggars walk and blind men see." Bob's voice was tremulous when he told them this, and trembled more when he said that Tiny Tim was growing strong and hearty. His active little crutch was heard upon the floor, and back came Tiny Tim before another word was spoken, escorted by his brother and sister to his stool before the fire. And while Bob, turning up his cuffs, as if, poor fellow, they were capable of being made more shabby, compounded some hot mixture in a jug with gin and lemons, and stirred it round and put it on the hob to simmer, Master Peter and the 2 ubiquitous young Cratchits went to fetch the goose, with which they soon returned in high procession. Such a bustle ensued that you might have thought a goose the rarest of all birds, a feathered phenomenon, to which a black swan was a matter of course, and in truth it was something very like it in that house. Mrs. Cratchit made the gravy, ready beforehand in a little saucepan, hissing hot. Master Peter mashed the potatoes with incredible vigour. Miss Belinda sweetened up the apple sauce. Martha dusted the hot plates. Bob took Tiny Tim beside him in a tiny corner at the table. The two young Cratchits set chairs for everybody, not forgetting themselves, and mounting guard upon their posts, crammed spoons into their mouths, lest they should shriek for goose before their turn came to be helped. At last the dishes were set on, and grace was said. It was succeeded by a breathless pause, as Mrs. Cratchit, looking slowly all along the carving knife, prepared to plunge it in the breast. But when she did, and when the long-expected gush of stuffing issued forth, one murmur of delight arose all round the board, and even Tiny Tim, excited by the two young Cratchits, beat on the table with the handle of his knife and feebly cried, "Hurrah!" There never was such a goose. Bob said he didn't believe there ever was such a goose cooked. Its tenderness and flavour, size and cheapness were the themes of universal admiration. Eked out by apple sauce and mashed potatoes, it was a sufficient dinner for the whole family. Indeed, as Mrs. Cratchit said with great delight, surveying one small atom of a bone upon the dish, they hadn't ate it all at last. Yet every one had had enough, and the youngest Cratchits in particular were steeped in sage and onion to the eyebrows. But now, the plates being changed by Miss Belinda, Mrs. Cratchit left the room alone, too nervous to bear witness, to take the pudding up and bring it in. Suppose it should not be done enough. Suppose it should break in turning out. Suppose somebody should have got over the wall of the backyard and stolen it while they were merry with the goose. A supposition at which the two young Cratchits became livid. All sorts of horrors were supposed. Hallo! A great deal of steam. The pudding was out of the copper. A smell like a washing day. That was the cloth. A smell like an eating house and a pastry cook's next door to each other, with a laundress's next door to that. That was the pudding. In half a minute, Mrs. Cratchit entered, flushed but smiling proudly, with the pudding like a speckled cannonball, so hard and firm, blazing in half a quartern of ignited brandy, and bedight with Christmas holly stuck into the top. "Oh, a wonderful pudding," Bob Cratchit said, and calmly too, that he regarded as the greatest success achieved by Mrs. Cratchit since their marriage. Mrs. Cratchit said that there was now the weight was off her mind. She would confess she had had her doubts about the quantity of flour. Everybody had something to say about it, but nobody said or thought it was at all a small pudding for a large family. It would have been flat heresy to do so. Any Cratchit would have blushed to hint at such a thing. At last the dinner was all done, the cloth was cleared, the hearth swept, and the fire made up. The compound in the jug being tasted and considered perfect, apples and oranges were put upon the table, and a shovelful of chestnuts on the fire. Then all the Cratchit family drew round the hearth, in what Bob Cratchit called a circle, meaning half a one, and at Bob Cratchit's elbow stood the family display of glass, 2 tumblers and a custard cup without a handle. These held the hot stuff from the jug, however, as well as golden goblets would have done, and Bob served it out with beaming looks, while the chestnuts on the fire sputtered and cracked noisily. Then Bob proposed, "A Merry Christmas to us all, my dears. God bless us," which all the family re-echoed.
"God bless us, every one,"
said Tiny Tim, the last of all. He sat very close to his father's side upon his little stool. Bob held his withered little hand in his, as if he loved the child and wished to keep him by his side, and dreaded that he might be taken from him. "Spirit," said Scrooge, with an interest he had never felt before, "tell me if Tiny Tim will live." "I see a vacant seat," replied the ghost, "in the poor chimney corner, and a crutch without an owner carefully preserved. If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, the child will die." "No, no," said Scrooge. "Oh, no, kind spirit, say he will be spared." "If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, none other of my race," returned the ghost, "will find him here. What then? If he be like to die, he had better do it, and decrease the surplus population." Scrooge hung his head to hear his own words quoted by the spirit, and was overcome with penitence and grief. "Man," said the ghost, "if man you be in heart, not adamant, forbear that wicked cant until you have discovered what the surplus is, and where it is. Will you decide what men shall live, what men shall die? It may be that in the sight of heaven you are more worthless and less fit to live than millions like this poor man's child. Oh, God! To hear the insect on a leaf pronouncing on the too much life among his hungry brothers in the dust." Scrooge bent before the ghost's rebuke, and trembling cast his eyes upon the ground. But he raised them speedily on hearing his own name. "Mr. Scrooge," said Bob. "I'll give you Mr. Scrooge, the founder of the feast." "The founder of the feast, indeed!" cried Mrs. Cratchit, reddening. "I wish I had him here. I'd give him a piece of my mind to feast upon, and I hope he'd have a good appetite for it." "My dear," said Bob, "the children! Christmas Day!" "It should be Christmas Day, I'm sure," said she, "on which one drinks the health of such an odious, stingy, hard, unfeeling man as Mr. Scrooge. You know he is, Robert. Nobody knows it better than you do, poor fellow." "My dear," was Bob's mild answer, "Christmas Day." "I'll drink his health for your sake and the day's," said Mrs. Cratchit, "not for his. Long life to him, a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. He'll be very happy, very merry and very happy, I have no doubt." The children drank the toast after her. It was the first of their proceedings which had no heartiness. Tiny Tim drank it last of all, but he didn't care twopence for it. Scrooge was the ogre of the family. The mention of his name cast a dark shadow on the party, which was not dispelled for full 5 minutes. After it had passed away, they were 10 times merrier than before. The mere relief of Scrooge the baleful being done with. Bob Cratchit told them how he had a situation in his eye for Master Peter, which would bring in, if obtained, full 5 and 6pence weekly. The 2 young Cratchits laughed tremendously at the idea of Peter's being a man of business, and Peter himself looked thoughtfully at the fire from between his collars, as if he were deliberating what particular investments he should favour when he came into the receipt of that bewildering income. Martha, who was a poor apprentice at a milliner's, then told them what kind of work she had to do, and how many hours she worked at a stretch, and how she meant to lie abed tomorrow morning for a good long rest, tomorrow being a holiday she passed at home. Also, how she had seen a countess and a lord some days before, and how the lord was much about as tall as Peter, at which Peter pulled up his collars so high that you couldn't have seen his head if you had been there. All this time the chestnuts and the jug went round and by they had a song about a lost child travelling in the snow from Tiny Tim, who had a plaintive little voice, and sang it very well indeed. There was nothing of high mark in this. They were not a handsome family, they were not well dressed. Their shoes were far from being waterproof. Their clothes were scanty, and Peter might have known, and very likely did, the inside of a pawnbroker's. But they were happy, grateful, pleased with one another, and contented with the time. And when they faded and looked happier yet in the bright sprinkling of the spirit's torch at parting, Scrooge had his eye upon them, and especially on Tiny Tim, until the last. By this time it was getting dark, and snowing pretty heavily, and as Scrooge and the spirit went along the streets, the brightness of the roaring fires in kitchens, parlours, and all sorts of rooms was wonderful. Here the flickering of the blaze showed preparations for a cosy dinner, with hot plates baking through and through before the fire, and deep red curtains ready to be drawn shut out cold and darkness. There all the children of the house were running out into the snow to meet their married sisters, brothers, cousins, uncles, aunts, and be the first to greet them. Here again were shadows on the window blind of guests assembling, and there a group of handsome girls, all hooded and fur-booted, and all chattering at once, tripped lightly off to some near neighbour's house, where woe upon the single man who saw them enter. For witches, well they knew it, in a glow. But, if you had judged from the numbers of people on their way to friendly gatherings, you might have thought that no one was at home to give them welcome when they got there, instead of every house expecting company and piling up its fires half chimney high. Blessings on it, how the ghost exulted, how it bared its breadth of breast, and opened its capacious palm, and floated on, outpouring with a generous hand its bright and harmless mirth on everything within its reach. The very lamplighter who ran on before, dotting the dusky street with specks of light, and who was dressed to spend the evening somewhere, laughed out loudly as the spirit passed, though little kenned the lamplighter that he had any company but Christmas. And now, without a word of warning from the ghost, they stood upon a bleak and desert moor, where monstrous masses of rude stone were cast about, as though it were the burial place of giants, and water spread itself wheresoever it listed, or would have done so, but the frost that held it prisoner, and nothing grew but moss and furze and coarse rank grass. Down in the west, the setting sun had left a streak of fiery red, which glared upon the desolation for an instant, like a sullen eye, and frowning lower, lower yet, was lost in the thick gloom of darkest night. "What place is this?" asked Scrooge. "A place where miners live, who labour in the bowels of the earth," returned the spirit. "But they know me. See." A light shone from the window of a hut, and swiftly they advanced towards it. Passing through the wall of mud and stone, they found a cheerful company assembled round a glowing fire. An old man and woman with their children and their children's children, and another generation beyond that, all decked out gaily in their holiday attire. The old man, in a voice that seldom rose above the howling of the wind upon the barren waste, was singing them a Christmas song. It had been a very old song when he was a boy, and from time to time they all joined in the chorus. So surely as they raised their voices, the old man got quite blithe and loud, and so surely as they stopped, his vigour sank again. The spirit did not tarry here, but bade Scrooge hold his robe, and passing on above the moor, sped whither? Not to see, to see. To Scrooge's horror, looking back, he saw the last of the land, a frightful range of rocks behind them, and his ears were deafened by the thundering of water as it rolled and roared and raged among the dreadful caverns it had worn, and fiercely tried to undermine the earth. Built upon a dismal reef of sunken rocks, some league or so from shore, on which the waters chafed and dashed the wild year through, there stood a solitary lighthouse. Great heaps of seaweed clung to its base, and storm-birds, born of the wind one might suppose as seaweed of the water, rose and fell about it like the waves they skimmed. But even here, 2 men who watched the light had made a fire, that through the loophole in the thick stone wall shed out a ray of brightness on the awful sea. Joining their horny hands over the rough table at which they sat, they wished each other Merry Christmas in their can of grog, and one of them, the elder, too, with his face all damaged and scarred with hard weather, as the figurehead of an old ship might, struck up a sturdy song that was like a gale in itself. Again the ghost sped on, above the black and heaving sea, on, until, being far away, as he told Scrooge, from any shore, they lighted on a ship. They stood beside the helmsman at the wheel, the lookout in the bow, the officers who had the watch, dark, ghostly figures in their several stations. But every man among them hummed a Christmas tune, or had a Christmas thought, or spoke below his breath to his companion of some bygone Christmas day, with homeward hopes belonging to it. And every man on board, waking or sleeping, good or bad, had had a kinder word for another on that day than on any day in the year, and had shared to some extent in its festivities, and had remembered those he cared for at a distance, and had known that they delighted to remember him. It was a great surprise to Scrooge, while listening to the moaning of the wind, and thinking what a solemn thing it was to move on through the lonely darkness, over an unknown abyss, whose depths were secrets as profound as death. It was a great surprise to Scrooge, while thus engaged, to hear a hearty laugh. It was a much greater surprise to Scrooge to recognise it as his own nephew's, and to find himself in a bright, dry, gleaming room, with the spirit standing smiling by his side, and looking at that same nephew with approving affability. "Ha ha!" laughed Scrooge's nephew. "Ha ha ha! If you should happen, by any unlikely chance, to know a man more blessed in a laugh than Scrooge's nephew, all I can say is, I should like to know him too. Introduce him to me, and I'll cultivate his acquaintance." It is a fair, even-handed, noble adjustment of things, that while there is an infection in disease and sorrow, there is nothing in the world so irresistibly contagious as laughter and good humour. When Scrooge's nephew laughed in this way, holding his sides, rolling his head, and twisting his face into the most extravagant contortions, Scrooge's niece, by marriage, laughed as heartily as he, and their assembled friends, being not a bit behindhand, roared out lustily. "Ha ha ha! He said that Christmas was a humbug as I live, cried Scrooge's nephew. He believed it too. More shame for him, Fred, said Scrooge's niece indignantly. Bless those women. They never do anything by halves. They are always in earnest. She was very pretty, exceedingly pretty, with a dimpled, surprised-looking, capital face, a ripe little mouth that seemed made to be kissed, as no doubt it was. All kinds of good little dots about her chin that melted into one another when she laughed, and the sunniest pair of eyes you ever saw in any little creature's head. Altogether, she was what you would have called provoking. You know, but satisfactory too. Oh, perfectly satisfactory. He's a comical old fellow, said Scrooge's nephew. That's the truth, and not so pleasant as he might be. However, his offences carry their own punishment, and I have nothing to say against him. I'm sure he is very rich, Fred, hinted Scrooge's niece. At least you always tell me so. What of that, my dear? Said Scrooge's nephew. His wealth is of no use to him. He don't do any good with it. He don't make himself comfortable with it. He hasn't the satisfaction of thinking that he is ever going to benefit us with it. I have no patience with him, observed Scrooge's niece. Scrooge's niece's sisters and all the other ladies expressed the same opinion. I have, said Scrooge's nephew. I am sorry for him. I couldn't be angry with him if I tried. Who suffers by his ill whims? Himself. Always. Here he takes it into his head to dislike us, and he won't come and dine with us. What's the consequence? He don't lose much of a dinner. Indeed, I think he loses a very good dinner, interrupted Scrooge's niece. Everybody else said the same, and they must be allowed to have been competent judges because they had just had dinner, and with the dessert upon the table were clustered round the fire by lamplight. Well, I'm very glad to hear it, said Scrooge's nephew, because I haven't great faith in these young housekeepers. What do you say, Topper? Topper had clearly got his eyes upon one of Scrooge's niece's sisters, for he answered that a bachelor was a wretched outcast, who had no right to express an opinion on the subject. Whereat Scrooge's niece's sister, the plump one with the lace tucker, not the one with the roses, blushed. Do go on, Fred, said Scrooge's niece, clapping her hands. He never finishes what he begins to say. He is such a ridiculous fellow. Scrooge's nephew revelled in another laugh, and, as it was impossible to keep the infection off, though the plump sister tried hard to do it with aromatic vinegar, his example was unanimously followed. I was only going to say, said Scrooge's nephew, that the consequence of his taking a dislike to us and not making merry with us is, as I think, that he loses some pleasant moments which could do him no harm. I'm sure he loses pleasanter companions than he can find in his own thoughts, either in his mouldy old office or his dusty chambers. I mean to give him the same chance every year, whether he likes it or not, for I pity him. He may rail at Christmas till he dies, but he can't help thinking better of it. I defy him. If he finds me going there in good temper year after year and saying, Uncle Scrooge, how are you? If it only puts him in the vein to leave his poor clerk £50, that's something. And I think I shook him yesterday. It was their turn to laugh now at the notion of his shaking Scrooge. But being thoroughly good-natured and not much caring what they laughed at, so they laughed at any rate, he encouraged them in their merriment and passed the bottle joyously. After tea, they had some music, for they were a musical family, and knew what they were about when they sung a glee or catch, I can assure you, especially Topper, who could growl away in the bass like a good one, and never swell the large veins in his forehead or get red in the face over it. Scrooge's niece played well upon the harp, and played among other tunes a simple little air, a mere nothing you might learn to whistle in 2 minutes, which had been familiar to the child who fetched Scrooge from the boarding school, as he had been reminded by the ghost of Christmas past. When this strain of music sounded, all the things that Ghost had shown him came upon his mind. He softened more and more, and thought that if he could have listened to it often, years ago, he might have cultivated the kindness of life for his own happiness with his own hands, without resorting to the sexton's spade that buried Jacob Marley. But they didn't devote the whole evening to music. After a while they played at forfeits, for it is good to be children sometimes, and never better than at Christmas, when its mighty founder was a child himself. Stop. There was first a game at Blind Man's Buff. Of course there was. And I no more believe Topper was really blind than I believe he had eyes in his boots. My opinion is that it was a done thing between him and Scrooge's nephew, that the ghost of Christmas present knew it. The way he went after that plump sister in the lace tucker was an outrage of the credulity of her human nature, knocking down the firearms, tumbling over the chairs, bumping against the piano, smothering himself among the curtains. Wherever she went, there went he. He always knew where the plump sister was. He wouldn't catch anybody else. If you had fallen up against him, as some of them did, on purpose, he would have made a feint of endeavouring to seize you, which would have been an affront to your understanding, and would instantly have sidled off in the direction of the plump sister. She often cried out that it wasn't fair, and it really was not. But when at last he caught her, when, in spite of all her silken rustlings and her rapid flutterings past him, he got her into a corner whence there was no escape, then his conduct was the most execrable. For his pretending not to know her, his pretending that it was necessary to touch her headdress, and further to assure himself of her identity by pressing a certain ring upon her finger and a certain chain about her neck, was vile, monstrous. No doubt she told him her opinion of it, when another blind man being in office, they were so very confidential together behind the curtains. Scrooge's niece was not one of the blind man's buff party, but was made comfortable with a large chair and a footstool in a snug corner, where the ghost and Scrooge were close behind her. But she joined in the forfeits, and loved her love to admiration with all the letters of the alphabet. Likewise, at the game of how, when, and where, she was very great, and to the secret joy of Scrooge's nephew, beat her sisters hollow, though they were sharp girls too, as Topper could have told you. There might have been 20 people there, young and old, but they all played, and so did Scrooge. For wholly forgetting in the interest he had in what was going on that his voice made no sound in their ears, he sometimes came out with his guess quite loud, and very often quite guessed right too, for the sharpest needle, best Whitechapel, warranted not to cut in the eye, was not sharper than Scrooge, blunt as he took it in his head to be. The ghost was greatly pleased to find him in this mood, and looked upon him with such favour that he begged like a boy to be allowed to stay until the guests departed. But this the spirit said could not be done. "Here is a new game," said Scrooge. "1 half-hour, spirit, only one." It was a game called Yes and No, where Scrooge's nephew had to think of something, and the rest must find out what. He only answering to their questions yes or no, as the case was. The brisk fire of questioning to which he was exposed elicited from him that he was thinking of an animal, a live animal, rather a disagreeable animal, a savage animal, An animal that growled and grunted sometimes, and talked sometimes, and lived in London, and walked about the streets, and wasn't made a show of, and wasn't led by anybody, and didn't live in a menagerie, and was never killed in a market, and was not a horse, or an ass, or a cow, or a bull, or a tiger, or a dog, or a pig, or a cat, or a bear. At every fresh question that was put to him, this nephew burst into a fresh roar of laughter, and was so inexpressibly tickled that he was obliged to get up off the sofa and stamp. At last, the plump sister, falling into a similar state, cried out, "I have found it out. I know what it is, Fred. I know what it is." "What is it?" cried Fred. "It's your Uncle Scrooge." Which it certainly was. Admiration was the universal sentiment, though some objected that the reply to "Is it a bear?" ought to have been yes, inasmuch as an answer in the negative was sufficient to have diverted their thoughts from Mr. Scrooge, supposing they had ever had any tendency that way. "He has given us plenty of merriment, I am sure," said Fred, "and it would be ungrateful not to drink his health. Here is a glass of mulled wine, ready to our hand at the moment, and I say, Uncle Scrooge." "Ha! Well, Uncle Scrooge," they cried. "A Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to the old man, whatever he is," said Scrooge's nephew. "He wouldn't take it from me, but may have it, nevertheless. Uncle Scrooge." Uncle Scrooge had imperceptibly become so gay and light of heart that he would have pledged the unconscious company in return, and thanked them in an inaudible speech if the ghost had given him time. But the whole scene passed off in the breath of the last words spoken by his nephew, and he and the spirit were again upon their travels. Much they saw, and far they went, and many homes they visited, but always with a happy end. The spirit stood beside sick beds, and they were cheerful. On foreign lands, and they were close at home. By struggling men, and they were patient in their greater hope. By poverty, and it was rich. In almshouse, hospital, and jail, in misery's every refuge, where vain man in his little brief authority had not made fast the door and barred the spirit out, he left his blessing, and taught Scrooge his precepts. It was a long night, if it were only a night, but Scrooge had had his doubts of this, because the Christmas holidays appeared to be condensed into the space of time they passed together. It was strange, too, that while Scrooge remained unaltered in his outward form, the ghost grew older, clearly older. Scrooge had observed this change, but never spoke of it, until they left a children's 12th night party, when, looking at the spirit as they stood together in an open place, he noticed that his hair was grey. "Are spirits' lives so short?" asked Scrooge. "My life upon this globe is very brief," replied the ghost. "It ends tonight." "Tonight?" cried Scrooge. "Tonight at midnight. Hark! The time is drawing near." The chimes were ringing the 11:15 at that moment. "Forgive me if I am not justified in what I ask," said Scrooge, looking intently at the spirit's robes. "But I see something strange and not belonging to yourself protruding from your skirts. Is it a foot or a claw?" "It might be a claw, for the flesh there is upon it," was the spirit's sorrowful reply. "Look here." From the foldings of its robe, it brought 2 children, wretched, abject, frightful, hideous, miserable. They knelt down at its feet and clung upon the outside of its garment. "Oh, man, look here! Look down here!" exclaimed the ghost. They were a boy and girl, yellow, meagre, ragged, scowling, wolfish, but prostrate too in their humility. Where graceful youth should have filled their features out and touched them with its freshest tints, a stale and shriveled hand, like that of age, had pinched and twisted them and pulled them into shreds. Where angels might have sat enthroned, devils lurked and glared out menacing. No change, no degradation, no perversion of humanity in any grade through all the mysteries of wonderful creation, as monsters half so horrible and dread. Scrooge started back, appalled. Having them shown to him in this way, he tried to say they were fine children, but the words choked themselves, rather than be parties to a lie of such enormous magnitude. "Spirit, are they yours?" Scrooge could say no more. "They are man's," said the spirit, looking down upon them, "and they cling to me, appealing from their fathers. This boy is ignorance. This girl is want. Beware them both, and all of their degree. But most of all, beware this boy, for on his brow I see that written which is doom, unless the writing be erased." "Deny it!" cried the spirit, stretching out his hand towards the city. "Slander those who tell it ye, admit it to their facetious purposes, and make it worse, and abide the end." "Have they no refuge or resource?" cried Scrooge. "Are there no prisons?" said the spirit, turning on him for the last time with his own words. "Are there no workhouses?" The bell struck 12. Scrooge looked about him for the ghost and saw it not. As the last stroke ceased to vibrate, he remembered the prediction of old Jacob Marley, and lifting up his eyes, beheld a solemn phantom draped and hooded, coming like a mist along the ground towards him. So, thank you for listening to that rather lengthy third chapter, Stave 3. I really hope you enjoyed it, of course. Let me pop this starting screen back. Yeah, I really hope you enjoyed it. Those of you that have made it to the end. It was a long one, that one, and I so didn't want to interrupt it. Last time I had to interrupt for my laptop charger because I meant to plug it in before the stream, but because I'd started it accidentally, I forgot to do that. So this time I was really like, okay, no interruptions. Let's go all the way through. But it was a long one, and my voice was getting a bit dry, and my lips were getting dry. And when you're not familiar with the chapter as well, it was a little bit tricky. But really hope you enjoyed it though. Thanks so much to those of you commenting. Oh, and Avani's here as well. It's been a long time, Avani. I hope you're doing well. Excuse me. I was like having a little bit of indigestion whilst I was reading as well. And I was trying not to burp into the microphone. It was a little bit uncomfortable. But thanks so much. Yeah, lovely to see Avani dropping in there as well. Were there any other newcomers popping in whilst I was reading? How long was that? Was that about an hour? I think it must have been. It says I've been live 1 hour and 46 minutes. I think it was around 45 minutes or so that I got started. It was a pretty long one. Yeah, thanks so much for the praise. I'm reading all of this as it goes past. You know how much I appreciate it. I really do. I honestly was feeling a little bit tired there, and wishing that I had thoroughly pre-read that one, because that was a little bit tricky. And like I said, dry mouth, dry throat a little bit there. But I really hope you enjoyed it. It's a lovely story. What can you say? It's a lovely story. I mean, it's cheesy in all the right ways, I think. There's some lovely messages. I think it's hard to dislike this one. I'm sure it's not everybody's favourite story. I'm sure it's many people, like one of many people's favourite stories, especially at this time of year. But I think it's a hard one to dislike. I really do. I think it's cozy and warm, thought-provoking, but varied. There's these heartfelt moments, sorrowful moments. It's all about reflection, isn't it? There's all sorts of morals, of course. Oh, thanks, Shannon. It's very kind mentioning the Twitch tips. Yeah, good night to those of you heading off to bed. If you're in the UK, it is 2:15, so good on you, Mama Fox, and those in the UK who are still awake, Aisling, and others. Good on you for still being here. I really appreciate that. Yeah, fantastic stuff. If there's anybody still awake in my time zone, I'm doubly impressed. Australia, if there's anybody over there today, there used to be quite a few popping in from Australia and over in the east of the world. I mean, for you now, it must be about midday or something like that. You're going to watch the movie right after the stream. Nice idea, Mango. Which particular version are you going to watch? No, I'm glad you don't find it cheesy. I mean, whether you find it cheesy or not, I don't mean any offense to the story at all. It's just, maybe cheesy isn't even the right word, but it is an old story, of course, as well, and there's all sorts of there's Christian sentiments and all sorts of things, but it applies to any of us, doesn't it? And certainly not just at Christmas time either. It reminds me of the whole kind of like um, puppies are for life, not just for Christmas, and those kind of things. These. Patrick Stewart, nice. Um, yeah, these morals, these messages, these sentiments, these behaviors or gestures or whatever, like they should apply to all our fellow men every day of the year. But nice way of putting it, Brad. I like that. Cheesy like a pizza. Only makes it better. I like that. Yeah, old fashioned. But it's of its time, isn't it? Um, I so wish, although it's very romanticized, I so wish often that you could go back in. There's many reasons I would go back in time, but to go back in time to try and experience, I guess this would require some brainwashing, temporary brainwashing as well, but to be able to experience things as they happened in the moment. I think that with some movies that came out at various times before I was born, so that you appreciate certain books, certain films, music. I mean, you could say historical events, all sorts of things, but like to be able to experience how that was for people experiencing it at that time for the first time, because obviously the effect that things have can change over time. So sometimes people don't appreciate how momentous something is in the moment, and it's appreciated in the future. And then, sometimes you're very aware maybe, or it would have extra impact to have been there for the release of that song or film or whatever. Just laughing at the Star Trek reference with Patrick Stewart. Yeah, absolutely. Cheesy, dark, and epic. What kind of pizza would that be, Brad? Thanks, Ashling. Oh, nice choice. That's another book that people have mentioned at certain times. Probably is copyrighted, isn't it? When was that published? Polar Express. Lovely animated film. Does that have Tom Hanks as one of the voices? It's a very long time since I've seen that. I think I was a kid. Oh, you were mentioning the dark and epic as well, Logan. And Brad, you were just mentioning Twitch as well. Yeah, I am going to use Twitch, definitely. I just thought, whoa, that's a big question, Shannon. I just saw the capital letters popping up whilst I'm skimming back through the chat on my screen. But wait, Twitch, yes, I am going to use Twitch again. I was just trying to be like a little bit consistent, because I was thinking, okay, do I start here? Because I've got a lot more subscribers here than I've got followers on Twitch. So my idea was, even though YouTube isn't monetized and I've had all these problems on YouTube and blah blah blah, I thought I could start the streams like I've done a couple of times, like start the streams on YouTube. That triggers those notifications, chat for a little bit, have the intro here, and then go over to Twitch like I did with Tamaria Prince a few weeks back, and then have the reading on Twitch. But I just thought, let's keep these things simple this time. I want 5 Christmas streams, 5 readings of A Christmas Carol. Let's just have them all on YouTube. Simple, And then if I continue streaming next year, I'm sure I will. It's I just don't like to like say definite sometimes, in case something happens. I don't know, but but like for next year's streams, I definitely want to use Twitch as well. I just haven't like quite settled. Like if I could, if there was like a really easy way to trigger those notifications, if I could tell all YouTube subscribers like, hey, there's a stream starting on Twitch now, I would do that and just stick to Twitch. I mean, I like that these videos will then be saved on YouTube as regular videos. YouTube doesn't seem to want me to upload Twitch streams to YouTube. Like I said a couple of streams ago, I was thinking that was part of the reason why they declined the verification and monetization privileges on this channel, but I deleted those couple of videos and it didn't seem to make a difference. So, you know, I could upload them here and it wouldn't really matter anyway. You know, sorry, I'm just rambling to myself here. I'm just voicing thoughts. But yeah, just trying to kind of explain that I've always felt a little bit lost in between the YouTube streaming and the Twitch streaming and this kind of thing. So, yeah. Shannon, you were saying, I'm sorry, this is not going to be a particularly interesting answer. But favorite cinematic version of Christmas Carol? Like, I honestly don't know. Like the one that is like, I think most like ingrained in my head, which does not mean it's my favorite, is the Muppets Christmas Carol. I can so vividly see Kermit. But let me get back to you on that one. Yeah, let me get back to you on that one. I need to refresh myself. Oh, and hello, Holly, as well. Nice to see you. I've not seen you for a while as well. Oh, yeah, rewind it when you get back from work. I wonder if you've already listened to the first two staves. Nice to see you. Avani says Jim Carrey, and Logan and Aisling are saying Tom Hanks. Yeah, very nicely put, Georgie. That's obviously gone off the screen now, but just talking about, if you don't mind me reading that out, I think it's a nice way of putting it. You're saying Dickens addressed and pointed out the social conditions of the time and made it okay to observe and interact with classes below you. Yeah, nice way of putting it. And then Shannon just chatting about Polar Express, Tom Hanks' Santa and the conductor. Yeah, I thought it was old Tomboy. I'm a big fan of Tom Hanks. I think he's great. And he seems like a genuinely nice person in the flesh as well, you know, out of Hollywood and the films and everything. Brad. Cheesy, dark and epic. Pepperoni, ghost peppers, sausage, bacon with garlic sauce. That sounds like an awesome custom pizza. I feel like I need to note that down and order it next time. Huh. Watching an old movie with your mum or, like some older relative or something is the next best thing about the perspective with old films and such. Yeah, absolutely, totally agree. And mum and dad, like for me as a child, you know, introduced me to so many things from decades and decades and decades past, you know, like classics even before their time and all, you know, all sorts of stuff. Yeah, I'm very lucky in that regard. Same with music and all sorts of stuff. If you're still here, Mango, it won't be tomorrow. And Christmas Eve is definitely off as well, because I'm staying away tomorrow night, and I'm away Christmas Eve. Weirdly, Christmas Day is more likely for the next stream, but more likely still is Boxing Day. So, like I said back on the first stream, I would have loved to have started these 5 streams sooner in the month and have been finishing off maybe today. But this is this. And it's been lovely to have these streams like in very close. Oh, sorry, I just smashed the laptop. And you at the same time, technically, or me. But it's been really nice to have these streams in quite quick succession. Just one every couple of days. So I will pencil in Boxing Day, so 26th. For those of you that don't have Boxing Day, 26th of December. But Discorders, you will definitely be in the loop. I always will keep you in the loop with what I'm doing with streaming. I did post on my YouTube community. Did anybody notice my YouTube community post that I shared earlier? I shared the video of Stave 1. Excuse me. And said at the top, like, streaming tonight, and I was like saying what time I was aiming for. So please tell me, like, did you notice that? I do appreciate people like thumbing up and even commenting on those community posts, because it lets me know that you've seen it and like what I've said. I mean, if you don't, then fair enough. I will do that again as well, I think. So Facebook fan page and YouTube community, I can try and give some warning there. Discord, definitely. Like I said before, I don't really like to do notifications like that on Patreon. I was considering it this time, and I think if I'd have not got distracted with some things this evening, I probably would have done, but it's not ideal. So let me just see what else is being said. So I will confirm when that next stream will be. And it's still Christmas, isn't it? Like it's the Christmas period, even in these days after Christmas Day, isn't it? Surely it's still nice to have 2 more readings of A Christmas Carol, even if it's 26th, 27th, 28th, 29th, or whatever. I hope so. So just reading the chat. I don't want to miss anything before I go. Oh, yeah, YouTube notifications are never consistent as well, George, it's true. Waffle on. Yeah, exactly, Olivia. I got that. About that Logan was the original creator of the Cheesy Dark and Epic before Brad sprinkled it onto a pizza. Yeah, Jim Carrey did this newer animated movie, yeah. The voice of. I've not seen that, actually. Oh, my eyes are getting tired with these contact lenses. They are getting tired. How does fried bread get mentioned again, Brad? Oh, dear. My hair, it looks very tired. It needs a wash. But it will be washed tomorrow. For Christmas stuff. English breakfast. I had a good one, actually. Back in England. There's a couple of good brunch spots. Pricey pricey, but some wonderful food. But yeah, had a lovely English breakfast on the way home from the airport in a cute little national park in the middle of the countryside cafe, outdoor lovers little haven of a town. I know that sentence didn't quite make sense, but you get the point. We had some real nice English breakfast cafe food. Very much an all-day breakfast as well. I think we were having it about 2 in the afternoon or something. It was really nice though. Good night, Mango. Good night. No worries. Hope to see you again. Always lovely to have you in the stream. Take care. I'm just skimming through the chat. I'm trying to catch up with you. That's annoying, Olivia. You were just replying about the YouTube app not showing you community posts. Yeah, that is annoying. It should be in your subscription feed. That's where it should be. So it's annoying that if you have to actually go into my channel and go to the community tab, because that's the best way of notifying without publishing a video or streaming, of course. So if it's not even reliable, it's a shame. Depends how many subscriptions you have, maybe as well. Maybe sometimes they just get lost in the feed. I don't know. But yeah, I will go to bed very shortly. I'm very tired, I must admit. It's been quite a busy weekend. It's not been such a relaxing weekend at all. 3:30 a.m. So yeah, I won't bother taking my eyeballs out and putting my glasses on. I'll just leave these for now. Yeah, I will head to bed, guys. Yeah, I've actually had a haircut, by the way, Logan. You know, I was saying I'd not had it cut for about, I honestly don't know, like 18 months or something. I don't know. I can't even bother to try and work out when it last was. But I had it trimmed. You know, you can't tell. You barely ever see it like this. And it was probably a similar length that last stream when I let it out back in the summer. You know, it's just taken a few months off, so it's probably similar to that. But when washed, it honestly does look way better. It looks way better than it did. So it was just a hefty trim, even though I know it's still long. But it was getting crazy. It was like down here and all broken at the bottom. Yeah, I don't know if I could pull off dreads. I don't know. I don't think so. Does anybody recognise this jumper, by the way? It's probably a very boring thing to ask, but I'll be impressed if you recognise the jumper. And I've not worn it on a stream before, I don't think. I didn't mean to do this, but I think it actually suited the jolly Ghost of Christmas present. Ooh, Christmas breakfast. Teresa laughing at me. Washed for Christmas. Yeah, that's going to be my Christmas present to myself. Washing my hair. Makes it sound like I do it once a year. Thanks so much, Aisling. You're always so kind. Yeah, you get some rest. You get some rest. Lovely to see you. Oof, Romanian moonshine. Sounds deadly, Georgie. Cinnamon roll waffles sounds amazing, Shannon. Whew. Yeah, I'll take my eyeballs out before bed, Teresa, don't worry. Don't you worry. I won't sleep with these in. Yeah, okay, Olivia. Yeah, YouTube is just weird. I'm not going to argue with that. Shannon. Oh, Mad Eye Moody. I never got to narrate Mad Eye Moody, sadly. Or not yet, anyway. Never say never. That is hardcore, Logan. One cut in almost 13 years, goodness me. Oh, that sounds nice as well, Georgie. I don't know what we're going to be having Christmas morning. I honestly don't know. Probably leftovers from Christmas Eve, as that's like the big dinner day in Sweden, like I was saying. No, I don't know. Could be. Could be some. They have like a really good rice pudding here. Yeah, I don't know. We will see. Yes, Brad. Yes. Yeah, you got it. I didn't know if that was a very silly, boring question to ask. But see, Shannon, it didn't matter. It didn't matter that you could only see the top, because it was only the top anyway. But yeah, it's my original little profile pic thing from my old Stephen Garnett channel. And I had it on Red Fox Voice as well. I just zoomed it in slightly more just so it was slightly different for whatever reason. But yeah, it is. Which is a picture taken. I have that picture in the $5 Google Drive as well. Why, I don't really know. I guess it's just to add a bit of personality to the folder. But as that was my old picture. But yeah, it's taken not so far from that cafe that I was talking about with the full English breakfast, the all day breakfast. Out in the Peak District National Park. It's a beautiful, beautiful spot. Up on moors. Like Dickens would said. Yeah, I've had the hair out once before, Mango, but yeah, this is a greasy reveal. Okay. Oh, a couple of you got it, actually. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna have to love you and leave you guys. It's so late now, and I'm tired. I'm getting stiff as well. I've been sat here too long. Exactly, Georgie, with the wind blowing in my hair on the moor. Yeah, the wind wuthering through air, like it is. Right then, bedtime. To bed, my brothers and sisters of the Fox clan. To bed. We rise at daybreak. At dawn, we rise and to battle. Tired. Thanks so very much, as always, for joining. What would be a great book, Mango? Wuthering Heights, were you thinking? When I mentioned the wind wuthering. Good night. Good night to Mango. Good night to Brad. Good night to Teresa. Good night to Georgie. Good night to Shannon. Hope you all get some. Exactly, Olivia. Good night to you too. Good night to everybody else still in the stream, and thanks so much for joining. Good night to Avani. We rise to make tea and breakfast and carry on working as though nothing else is happening. And then Christmas doth come. All right. Thanks so much for joining. see you very soon. I'll try and keep you in the loop as to when the next stream will be. It always confuses me, that, Teresa. I don't know how else to say it. You will always be Teresa in my brain. Okay. So long, and thanks for all the fish. Take care wherever you are. If I don't see you before Christmas, have a wonderful Christmas, happy holidays and all that. Merry Christmas to you. Have a lovely time. Whatever you're doing, find some peace and try and enjoy yourselves. Have some tasty food, whatever you like to do. And if I do see you before then all good. Okay. So, thanks again. Teresa. I'm joking. Okay. Good night, everybody. Thanks again, Fox fans. Take care. And read to you soon.